Welcome to the CouchScouts Podcast. We provide league-winning analysis, advice, and tools to help you dominate your league and build a dynasty. Scout, draft, win. Here's your host, Matt Cooper.
Welcome to the CouchScouts Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Cooper. With me is my co-host, Matt Rupert.
How you doing, my man?
I'm doing great. It is good to be back on the show. We are one more week without Matt Jackson, but hopefully he'll be back soon. His internet is still pretty spotty. He said that when he tries to do video calls and stuff, it just whacks the whole thing out. So, yeah, I mean, it just shows you a lot of people have kind of moved on and forgotten about the hurricane, but the people up there are still in the thick of it. And yeah, so prayers up for Mr. Jackson. And we'll talk more about Western North Carolina here in a second. But on this episode of the CouchScouts Podcast, we are going to be looking at players to target if you're looking to compete down the stretch and go for the championship. So if you watched or listened last week, we talked about trade targets for rebuilding teams. If you haven't, definitely go check that one out. But this week, we're going to be kind of looking on the flip side. If you are looking to contend, who are some guys that you should look to acquire? And this one may feel a little bit more obvious, like just get the older productive guys. But hopefully we'll give you some insight that helps you a little bit beyond that. But yeah, tonight I'm excited to get into that show, and always love talking trades. Trades is fun, and you know, hopefully you're either rebuilding or you're contending. So one of these podcasts is going to help you out. You don't want to be stuck in the middle. So figure out which one you are and act accordingly. But before we get into the show tonight, I wanted to just take a second to let you know that we have a website, CouchScouts.com, with lots of resources and tools to help you dominate your league. Our philosophy is that if you can scout well, and we want to give you the resources to do that, then you're going to draft well. And if you draft well consistently year after year in your rookie draft, you're going to accrue value on your fantasy team. It's going to give you more ammunition for trades, and ultimately you're going to dominate your league. That's what we've built. That's the play style philosophy that we've built our brand around. And every tool on our site is meant to help you do just that. So we'll have a 2025 rookie guide where we break down, last year it was over 60 prospects that we broke down strengths, weaknesses, where we would draft them, gave them a film score, pre-draft and post-draft rankings. All that is going to be on the site this year behind our Couch Scouts packages. We have an all-22 film room where you can study underclassmen, offensive players, and IDP defensive players from the 2025 draft class. So if you play IDP and you're like, hey, I've wanted to scout and like actually watch these players and form my own opinion, but I've never had a place that actually had film for me to do that, we got you covered. You can schedule a 30-minute team consultation with us where we'll walk you through personalized advice for one of your dynasty rosters. We have bonus podcasts. So we're going to be recording one of those right after we get off this show, covering some trades from our Discord. So yeah, lots of great content on there. And the great thing is that it's going to be, for the month of October, all of our proceeds are being donated to help the folks in Western North Carolina who are still recovering from the hurricane. So I'm advertising all of this to you, not for my own benefit, but to tell you that's all of what you're going to be getting when you make a donation to the Red Cross, right? So basically, if you purchase a package, we're going to take 100% of that. We're going to donate it to the American Red Cross, and it's going to be as if you made a donation, but you're also going to get this sweet dynasty content on top of it. So we would highly encourage you guys to do that, and we want to thank the people who have already done that. We have already raised over $500 to donate to the Red Cross, which is unbelievable. I mean, we just launched the site last month, so this is like way exceeding our expectations. This is more money than any of us could have donated on our own. And so we're just grateful for you guys as a community that have jumped in and helped us to do this. We're really excited to make that donation. We've got a little less than 10 days left in the month. And so home stretch, can we get to 1,000? How about that for a faith goal? Can we get double what we've got in the last 10 days? If you're not in there, jump in there. I'm really excited to send this donation in, though, and thankful that we're able to help people out up there. So with all that being said, let's jump into the topic for tonight's show, which, as I said, is trade targets for contending rosters. And with the slight caveat that, of course, every league is different. So I might say to target one particular player, but in your league, that player might be on the roster of another contending team. And so he may not be really available for you to go and get. So obviously, we're talking in a vacuum here, but we're just going to talk about some players that we like the value. We think that the asking price right now is worth what you're going to get out of them. So we're going to get into it. I've been talking long enough. Rupert, who is your first contending team trade target for tonight?
My first one is David Montgomery, a guy that's viewed as the RB2 on his team, with Gibbs kind of taking all the spotlight, being the really dynamic back. But, Montgomery is just a guy that produces week in and week out. Coach's favorite player. He's scored a touchdown just about every game this year. And he's RB13 on the season so far, despite the fact that he's already had a bye week in there. And he's been averaging basically 19 points a game in PPR. So just been an absolute fantasy stud this year. And the fact that he's an older running back, kind of viewed as a RB2 on his own team, makes him more affordable than he would be if, he didn't have Gibbs in the same running back room.
For sure. I think people definitely still view him as like this plotter, touchdown dependent. I don't know if I really trust him or how long term it's going to be. They gave him a contract extension. Are you at all concerned with the fact that he just had his worst game? He only had 9 carries, had 4 targets, but only 9 carries, did not get in the end zone, did not cross double-digit fantasy points. Are you concerned that like Gibbs is edging him out and Montgomery's involvement is going down? Or do you think this was just kind of a fluke week? Maybe it was game script or matchup dependent. What do you think? Is that a cause for concern, or does that just help you buy low on him?
Yeah, I would use it to buy low, potentially, since all the hype is Gibbs and the big runs he had this past weekend, monster game that he had. I'm not viewing one game as, every running back's going to have, a down game, especially when they're in a committee like that. It's just going to happen. But every other game, he's been pretty much putting up 20 points without fail. Now it feels like something where he's gone like a whole 3 or 4 games, basically a whole month, where he's not reaching double digits, and that definitely be more cause for concern. But with the way the team has really embraced him, signed him to an extension, which is still kind of shocking based on the fact that they took Gibbs in the first round and then extended another running back. But I guess that kind of gives them time to keep Montgomery until Gibbs's rookie contract could be up.
Yeah. Well, and they're trying to contend right now, and the coach just will not stop raving about how much he loves David Montgomery and how every team needs a David Montgomery and how he fits that ethos and everything. So I'm with you. I'm not going to overreact to the one game. I do think he's a good contender buy. My first contender buy is I'm also going to stay with the running back position, and it's Joe Mixon from not the Cincinnati Bengals, the Houston Texans this year. And I mean, this one's pretty simple for me. Every game that he has started and finished healthy this season, he's gone over 25 fantasy points in PPR. I mean, he has just been an absolute monster producer. He's getting huge workloads. The offense, as much as we thought, man, this is going to be a throw heavy. They got Diggs, they got Tank Dell, they got Nico Collins, they got CJ Stroud. Like, no, they're running that thing through Joe Mixon right now. And he looks good. He doesn't look even close to washed. Not remotely. It's a semi-long-term contract that they signed him to. It's not like he's just on a one-year deal. So I think people are still kind of viewing him. I mean, he's 28 years old. So every year besides this one that you get out of him is kind of a nice bonus. It's hard to trust it. But at the same time, like, I do think you could get 2 to 3 more good years out of him. The way that he looks and with what that contract is, and he could literally win you a league. I think he's a top 5 running back the rest of the season. And so, when you look at some of the guys that you can send to get him, according to Keep Trade Cut, and I always have to throw out the caveat that I do not use Keep Trade Cut for the trade calculator. I do not take screenshots of the trade calculator and send it to people and say, this is why you should accept my deal. But I think that it's a good resource to help you figure out how your league mates might be feeling about a player, how they might be valuing a player, because this thing's crowdsourced from like thousands and thousands of people. So it does give you a good feel for how the average dynasty player is viewing these guys. And so maybe your league's a little more sharp. Maybe your manager that owns this particular player is a little bit more stingy, but this is what I got to go on. All right. And so according to this, you could trade Tank Dell and get Joe Mixon straight up. If I'm on a contending team, I'm very interested in making that move because it can win me a league. I love Tank Dell. I think long term he's going to be great. I'm interested in making that move. It says that you could send a late 2025 first and get Joe Mixon. I'm willing to do that. If I'm a contender, and like that is a piece that absolutely can put you over the top. He looks like an absolute stud this year. Could it backfire? Could he get hurt? Of course. Could the player that you would have taken with your first round pick be like an absolute stud? Like, of course, that's always something that can happen. But we're here to win championships. And Joe Mixon can do that for you. And, the odds of that first round pick turning in, like, I trust my ability to draft. I love scouting. I love drafting. But statistically, the odds of hitting on a late first round pick is about 50-50. So give me the top 5 running back for the rest of the season in that scenario. So I'm a fan of buying Joe Mixon right now at cost. What do you think, Rupert?
100% agree. And he was a guy that I was really high on with the move to Houston with that offensive line. I thought that their scheme fit his game a lot more than the power running scheme that they would run in Cincinnati. And, he's just shown out every game. And when he was out, it's not like anyone behind him was putting up crazy numbers. So, it's like his talent that's really making that offense go. And I agree. It's been kind of shocking to see that the offense runs through him and not through the wide receiver room.
He looks so much better than he's ever looked. I mean, I know early in his career, I remember watching Christopher Harris's YouTube channel, and he was, stop foot, go foot, and he loved him some Joe Mixon, and we did too. And I have always been a little surprised that he was this high volume, low efficiency guy. Like, why is he not running better than this from an efficiency metrics standpoint? And even like the pass catching skill set is there. Why was he not being used more that way? And I don't know that I have a great answer, but right now it feels like at 28 years old, we're seeing it all come together from a talent standpoint, a prospect that we've always really loved in a system that fits him with a great offense, lots of touchdown opportunities. He's seen at least 3 targets in every game that he's played in this year, which doesn't sound like a ton, but like that's giving you a couple free points every week. And, over the course of the season, that's probably going to, bear out to 40 plus receptions, which is definitely going to help his overall finish. So, currently I think he is RB5 on the season, despite missing 3 games. And I have no reason to think, or no, it might be RB5 on a per game basis. I don't have it in front of me because I just don't, but I think, obviously you've got 3 games of 25, 26, 27 fantasy points in the games that he's been healthy. So on a per game basis, he's got to be way up there. And I don't think that's a fluke. I think he continues doing that all year long. So let's move on to trade target number 2. And who's your second trade target here, Rupert?
This one almost feels like cheating, just due to the fact that he's RB1 on the season so far, but Derrick Henry, just due to the fact that he's 30 years old, and people, and especially after he kind of got off to a slow start on the season, he was getting like 40-something% snap share. It kind of looked like he was just going to be in a timeshare there and not really be a fantasy producer. After, I think, week 3, he started to get around 50% snap share, but he's still only been getting around 60%, even when he's been dominating. So he's still not getting a ton of snap share. They're using him fairly sparingly, but he's just, being incredibly efficient. and he's just been a touchdown machine, scoring in almost every single game, except for his last game. The offensive line's great. Being there with Lamar is great. And I think this is, even though he's 30, like you said earlier with Mixon, give up a first, as long as it's not an early or mid, I'd say, and go ahead and get him if you can.
Yeah, see, I don't know. That one's harder for me because, like you said, the snap share is not consistently there. He's been relying on these huge chunk runs. I mean, even last night, he had like 30 yards going into the fourth quarter, and he busts off these 2 monster runs, and he ends up with a big fantasy day. I know he's been doing that his whole career.
That's what I was just about to say.
I mean, I get that. I don't know. To me, I don't know if I trust it. And a first round pick for a 30-year-old, I feel relatively confident that I can get at least 2 more good years out of Joe Mixon. I don't feel that way about Derrick Henry. I don't want to send a first for a guy that I'm not going to get at least 2 years out of. And just to give you an idea, he's actually valued, according to Keep Trade Cut, a good bit higher than Joe Mixon right now. So the kind of assets that they're saying that you're going to have to give up to get Derrick Henry, DJ Moore, Jared Goff, Anthony Richardson, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. I'm not giving up any of those dudes for Derrick Henry. No shot. So that's one that we might disagree on here. At cost, I don't know if I'm buying Derrick Henry. I do think he's going to give you production. And every league's different. You might have a league mate that they're rebuilding and they're just trying to get Derrick Henry off their roster and he's 30 years old or whatever. Like maybe you can go get him for a late first. But I don't know. That's not what I'm seeing here as far as like what consensus would say. So he's ranked a good bit above Derrick Henry right now. He's at Mixon. He's at 11, running back 11. According to Keep Trade Cuts rankings, and Mixon's all the way down at running back 17, which I don't really get that. I'd rather have Mixon. I'd for sure rather have Mixon. So, let's move along here. Unless you have another rebuttal there.
I was curious because I couldn't remember what contract Baltimore signed him to. They did sign him to a 2-year contract. So,
okay.
But
yeah, I'd be curious to see like how much dead money that there would be if they cut him in the offseason. Because a lot of times it's like if it's a 2-year contract and the second year is like not guaranteed at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't hate Derrick Henry. If you can get him at a reasonable price, I think he can definitely help you win a championship. I'm just not sure the price makes sense right now. So
yeah.
I'm going to move on to my second trade target here for a contending team, and that is Jake Ferguson, tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. And the reason that I've got Jake Ferguson on here is, I think from a name, brand, value standpoint, people don't view him in the elite tight end conversation. They kind of view him as, he's just this jag that's propped up by the Cowboys system, and Dak loves to target the tight end. And, in a year or two, or when, I don't know when his contract is up, he's going to go the way of Dalton Schultz. They're going to move on to somebody else and he's going to go be irrelevant on some other team. And that is possible. I'm not going to deny that possibility, and I get why he's not priced up there with like the Sam Laportas and Trey McBrides and Dalton Kincaids of the world. Speaking of Dalton Kincaid, I'd much rather put Jake Ferguson in my lineup right now, but Dalton Kincaid is a lot more expensive in Dynasty, and I think that's what makes Jake Ferguson a contender buy, because when you look at just what he's doing, I mean, this last week he had a down week, 4 targets, but every other game that he has been healthy, week 1, he left the game early, week 2, he didn't play, but every other game he's 7+ targets. He's just getting fed week after week. So he's got a good floor at a position that has just been really ugly. Like he's one of maybe 3 tight ends that I feel confident sticking in my lineup week in and week out. And I know he's going to give me a good performance. And I can't say that about almost anybody else. So I feel like that gives me an edge over my competition if I've got one of those three guys that you can feel good about, and that means that almost everybody else in my league doesn't have that guy. From a dynasty perspective, he's tight end 9, and some of the guys that you could trade to get him, again per keep trade cut, he's in the same range. Tight end 10 is Cole Kmet. I would definitely rather have Jake Ferguson. Tight end 8 is Tucker Kraft. I think I'd rather have Jake Ferguson. Tight end 7 is George Kittle. Now, if you're a contending team, maybe you stick with Kittle, but from a dynasty perspective, I'd rather have Jake Ferguson. If I'm talking about non-tight ends, he's in the same range as like Aaron Jones, which again, if you're a contender, that's a little wonky. Travis Etienne, I think I know like you're selling low on a guy while everybody's panicked, but I am worried about Etienne. Like the organization that spent a first round pick on him is a totally different regime, coaching, everything is different than when they spent a first round pick on him. He's getting ready to be due to get paid. His efficiency has always been pretty bad, and Tank Bigsby just looks better than him right now. So I'm not sure if or when Travis Etienne bounces back. And if I can just take the name brand and go get Jake Ferguson, who's going to help me win my league, and he's only 25 years old, I think I'm making that move. So, yeah, I think you can get him, and it's not going to break the bank. I think you could send a late first pretty easily and get Jake Ferguson. You might even be able to get it done with like an early to mid second. So, or could you send like a second and a player? You know, could I send Xavier Legette in a second round pick and get a player like Jake Ferguson that's going to help me win a championship? That's a move that I'm very interested in making. So I think he's, whereas some of these high end, like considered elite young dynasty tight ends are going to cost you like a first plus, and they're really going to be very expensive. I think Jake Ferguson is going to give you more production for less cost. What do you think?
I think it's a really, really phenomenal call out, especially with how disgusting the tight end landscape has been. You know, a lot of teams that would look like contenders at the beginning of the season with Travis Kelce, Sam Laporta, those kind of players, Mark Andrews, another one.
You know, had a great game, by the way, last night.
Yeah. You know, if they're, you know, basically getting duds almost at the tight end position, and then you can get a guy that's putting up double digits, you know, you instantly give yourself a matchup advantage. So I think that's probably the best call out on our so sheet tonight that can really give you an edge over other contenders in the league.
I mean, according to this, you could trade Braylon Allen for Jake Ferguson. That doesn't make any sense to me. Now, I don't know if that accounts for tight end premium. It does not. But yeah, I mean, that's anyway. So yeah, I think he's acquirable, and I think he can definitely help you win. So let's move on. Actually, before we get to our third and final trade target of the night, I did want to take a quick break and let you guys know about our Discord. It's completely free, 100%. You can just click the link in the show sheet, click the link in our bio on Twitter, and join. We made it very simply. The purpose is we wanted to get to know the people listening to our show. We wanted to form a community where it's not just like, hey, there's somebody random on the other side of the computer listening to us. We don't know them. They don't know us. But we wanted a community. And I would say mission accomplished, because we've got over 100 guys in there talking ball all the time, talking dynasty, posting their cookout picks, reacting to news, posting their trades. And especially over the last week, since I guess a week ago to the day, I was on the FFT Dynasty podcast as a guest. So thank you, Heath Cummings, for allowing me to come on there. Obviously, they've got a really large following. And so a lot of the guys that listen to that show joined the Discord. Maybe some of you guys are listening right now. And so we've had a huge influx of new members. A lot of them have been really active in the chat. And so it's just been fun. The community is always buzzing, and would love for you guys to be a part of it. It's totally free. So come join us. And with all that being said, let's get into our final trade target of the night. And who is your trade target number 3 for a contending team, Mr. Rupert?
Going with Scary Terry, even though this is not something I would have said at the beginning of the year, but it seems that him and Jane Daniels have quite the connection. He's wide receiver 12 on the year in PPR. Got off to a slow start as well to the season. I guess just developing that rapport. And then Jane Daniels just coming along. Since then, he scored 15 points every game. And the thing I like most is it's not just being touchdown dependent. He's earning targets. He's getting over 7 targets a game. So he's the guy that's going to be producing double-digit points pretty much week in, week out, it looks like. Going forward, he doesn't have a ton of pass-catching competition to really worry about. But only thing to me that you have to worry about is if Jane Daniels misses any more time. Other than that, he seems like a plug-and-play the rest of the year.
Yeah, so let me throw out some of these value-adjacent players from Keep Trade Cut and to see how many of these would you trade for him. And I'll give you a spoiler here. Every single one of these will lead to more points per game in your fantasy lineup and will help you win a championship. But they will hurt from a dynasty standpoint. Like you'll go, ouch, I don't know. Jameson Williams. Yeah, with the suspension, especially, I don't know exactly that this ADP has like really adjusted for that yet.
Yeah.
So I don't know. This next one, I know you're gonna feel it. Xavier Worthy.
Ooh.
Would you send Xavier Worthy for Terry McLaurin?
Yeah. If I really thought this was my year, my team's looking strong. Yeah, I would. As long as I don't have too little depth, back behind him. Okay. That would hurt, but yeah, I would do it.
Okay, so again, tight end premium is off here. Dalton Kincaid. Would you send Dalton Kincaid for Terry McLaurin?
Oof. I would have to have another good tight end option. Like if I had someone like, I don't know, Luke Musgrave or Cole Kmet behind him, I probably wouldn't in that.
Okay.
Just because of how scarce tight end's been.
All right, so this one might sting the most out of everybody because I know how you feel about this player.
Oh no!
Would you send Ladd McConkey for Terry McLaurin?
Don't break my heart like that. Oh gosh!
It would help your lineup if you're a contender. It would help your lineup, but we love this player long term.
I think I would hold out on that one. Maybe if things still haven't really turned around. Because I feel like Ladd's someone who could really come on strong as the year.
He could. He for sure could.
So maybe I'd wait a few weeks until closer to the trade deadline on that one.
Yeah.
But if it gets to the trade deadline and he's still, kind of producing as is, that passing attack is still being very subpar, then I'd probably pull up the trigger at that time.
Okay. All right. From a pick standpoint, I'm guessing it would take a late first. I don't think you're getting Terry for a second.
Ooh.
Would you send a late first for Terry McLaurin?
I don't think I would. I think I try and do a second and a player.
Yeah, which you might be able to get done. So if you look at some of the players that are kind of below him on this list, would you send Bucky Irving in a second?
You're picking all the ones that are going to
I'm
break
picking
my
all
heart,
the guys that are your guys.
I would not.
But a guy that's trying to rebuild, he doesn't want an older player. He wants these young guys are going to be what's enticing to him. True. Would you send Bo Nix in a second in a Superflex league?
Yeah, because I'm not really a believer at all in him. So just take the value while he's a starter. Because I'm not sure how long that's going to last.
Yeah. So here's one that I know we both think is overrated. I'm pretty sure you would do this. Keon Coleman in a second.
All day.
Yeah, I think if you had that, which I don't have any Keon Coleman shares, but I think if you had that would get it done for a lot of leagues with a Terry McLaurin owner who's trying to rebuild. So, all right. Well, I always want to make it practical and give legs to it, not just say, oh yeah, we're going to buy this guy, but not say what we'd buy him for. So my last one here, Little bit of a deeper dive. I didn't want to give all like super obvious names like, oh, they're old and they're killing it and they're at the top of the, whatever. So this one's you could probably get for a third round pick. You think? Third round pick for this guy? Juju Smith-Schuster. And I'm not saying that this guy is like a surefire, he's going to go be a league winner, but he missed this week with an injury. They were on bye the week before that. He had 1 week after the Rashee Rice injury where he kind of stepped into that Rashee Rice role. He got 8 targets, put up 20 fantasy points. And, I think he's going to continue to play that Rashee Rice kind of big slot, target hog role for this offense because they don't really have anybody else that fits it. And I'm not saying he's going to put up 20 fantasy points every game, but I think this is a guy that you can get for dirt cheap that, if my projection, if my, gamble pays off here, I think he's a guy that you can feel good about putting in your lineup just about every week for the rest of the season. And he's got a high floor with a decent ceiling. And, because you didn't have to give up much for him, you're probably going to be able to put him in a flex spot. It's not like you're relying on this guy to be your wide receiver 1. I think he's going to be a really good high-end flex option the rest of the season, or at least he could be. And I think it's worth finding out for what amounts to a third-round pick for Juju Smith-Schuster. What do you think?
I think that's a huge win, in my opinion. He fits that role, being able to play that big slot very well. He struggled on the outside the last couple of years, but Andy Reid and the company knows how to use him. And, they've already kind of laid the blueprint out with Rashee Rice. And even though he's not as dynamic after the catch, he's going to be a consistent target earner just because they know how to scheme it up for him.
Yeah. So when I look at these value adjacent things, it's got a mid to late third, which easily outsun that. I mean, I don't care. That's gonna be a bust anyway. Most likely, I'll send that for Juju. He can help me win. I'm contending. Ty Chandler. I would send Ty Chandler for Juju.
Oh yeah.
Gabe Davis. I would send him for Juju. Hunter Henry, Luke Musgrave, Jermaine Burton, Alan Lazard, Roman Wilson. Like I would send all of these for Juju in a heartbeat. So yeah, I feel like he's a buy right now. So that's my final one. And we're ending on, it feels like we're ending on a weird note because we're talking about all these big names and then we're throwing out Juju Smith-Schuster, but hopefully, this is one that not everybody on every podcast is going to be talking about. I hope this gives you some good insight to I would never have even thought about trying to trade for Juju, but I'm going to go do that. And hopefully it helps you win your league. So,
yeah, I feel like this is the most practical advice from our show tonight. If you can get any of these done, start with this one, and then you can kind of go from there.
It's definitely the most doable.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these other guys, people are going to be like, I don't know. Like, maybe I want to hold out for more. But this guy, if he's sitting on some rebuilding roster, they're just like, yeah, sure, whatever, take him. I just, I can get something. He was worthless 2 days ago. Great, exactly. I'll take it. So it should be a very doable move to make. So we appreciate you guys listening tonight. That's going to do it for our main show. Reminder that we are going to have a bonus podcast for our CouchScouts.com members right after this one that will go up on the site later tonight. We are going to be going over trades from the Discord. So we had a lot of our Discord members post their recently completed trades, and we're going to give our thoughts on them, and that'll be on the bonus show. So you can find me on Twitter/X at CouchScoutsFF. You can find Mr. Rupert at Matthew Rupert FF. And we would both love to engage with you on there. We hope that you'll leave a 5-star review, like, comment, sub, all that kind of stuff just to help people find our show. We appreciate you watching or listening, and we'll see you next week.